Every poker room has a rhythm. The sound of chips, casual conversation, and the steady hum of bad advice making its way around the table. Sit long enough, and you'll hear things that make you pause mid-shuffle, things that sound right, feel confident, but are completely backward once you break them down. That's what our new series, Overheard at the Table, is about. Real conversations, real mistakes, and the lessons hiding in plain sight. Tonight, two stories from the bow. One about a player who straddled every single button, convinced it gave him control, until the math caught up to him. And another about a casual conversation over flush odds, where 30% confidence meant 19% reality. Both are reminders of the same truth. Poker punishes activity without purpose and belief without understanding. I was in seat 1 at the bow, just another weeknight 1-3 gain. Seat 3 had been there for a short time before I sat down, and you couldn't miss him. He was talkative, confident, and straddling every single time he got the button. Didn't matter what was happening, chips hit the line before the blinds even looked up. The pattern was automatic. $6 on the button, wait for the limpers, and then raise it by whatever the dead money was. If 5 players limped, he'd bump it to around $35. If fewer, maybe $25. He had this formula in his head like it was carved in stone. The bigger the pot, the bigger the raise. The problem was, it wasn't working. About a third of the time, someone would raise his straddle before it even got back to him, forcing him to fold and watch his $6 go down the drain. And when it did come back to him, he'd raise, get 4 to 6 callers, see a flop, and then check. Almost every time. Actually, I don't recall seeing even one continuation bet from him. He was playing by the seat of his pants, no plan, not even a bad one. You could almost set your watch by it. By the time I'd been there about 90 minutes, he'd already lost 2 $500 buy-ins and bought back in for a third. He had slightly over $500 when I sat down, so that's at least $1,500 gone that night. Maybe more before I got there, so he is now a minimum of $2,000 in the game. But it never slowed him down. Then, somewhere between rebuy 2 and 3, a new player sat down, a middle-aged woman, first-timer vibe, polite and curious. She watched a few hands and finally asked him, "Why do you straddle every time?" He lit up. You could tell he'd been waiting for someone to ask. "It gives me last action," he said proudly. "I get to control the hand. Everyone limps, I raise it up, and now they have to play my game." She nodded like she'd just been given insider knowledge. And I'm sitting there thinking, you're not controlling anything. You're paying rent to watch your own show. The truth is, the button straddle can have value, used selectively, in the right game, at the right time, for the right reasons. But in a loose, splashy 1-3 game where more than half the table's seeing every flop, it's just burning money. He was turning a 1-3 cash game into a 3-6 game with no edge and no plan. And when the last buy-in disappeared, so did he. Not a bad beat. Not a cooler. Just a man mistaking activity for accomplishment. If you don't have a strategic plan for why you're doing something at the poker table, odds are it's costing you chips. Here's another example of misunderstood poker math. A hand wraps up and the river doesn't bring a heart, just a blink. The player who'd been chasing lets out that half-groan, half-laugh you hear when a draw misses. He shows his hand to the player next to him, who says, "Close, you almost made it," he nods. "Yeah, I had a 1-in-3 shot. I'll take those odds all day." I don't say a word, but I'm thinking, there's that 35% myth again. Here's the truth. With 2 hearts in your hand and 2 hearts on the flop, you've got 9 outs. That's about 35% to complete by the river, not on the river, meaning you are about 35% combined for both the turn and river. On the turn, you have about a 19% probability, or 4.22 to 1 odds of hitting your flush, and pretty much the same on the river, not 1 in 3. Not to mention that he called a $85 bet into a $210 pot, giving him 2.4 to 1 pot odds to see the river card, when he actually needed 4 to 1 to be close to correct in the call mathematically. And even if you make the flush, you won't always get paid. Sometimes the heart kills action. Sometimes the board pairs. Sometimes you run into a bigger flush. So when I hear I had the odds, what I really hear is I had the hope, because most players don't correlate pot odds to hand probabilities, let alone fold equity, implied odds, etc. Don't memorize numbers, understand what they mean for the bet you're facing. 2 different tables. 2 different players. One is trying to buy control with constant activity. Another trusting numbers he didn't really understand. Both losing not from bad luck, but from bad reasoning. Whether it's a straddle you don't need or a draw you shouldn't chase, the math never lies. The game always tells the truth eventually. I'm Terry Wood, and if you want to go deeper into the strategy and psychology behind real poker, visit pokerrailbird.com. And remember, poker isn't about copying what looks bold, it's about understanding what's correct. Thanks for watching, and we'll see you at the tables.